Hey. In 2004, Mayor Mario Cuomo wrote a book entitled Why Lincoln Matters. Since this year marks Lincoln's 200th anniversary of his birthday, the book has enjoyed a resurgence of interest. Articles, interviews, and book reviews this month are all featuring Lincoln and his importance to our modern times. It is no coincidence that our new President, Barack Obama, took his oath into office with his hand on Lincoln's Bible. In fact, Michael Beschloss, America's presidential historian, wrote an interesting article that was featured in last week's USA Weekend newspaper regarding why it is important for Americans to understand Lincoln's legacy. This speech highlights the points that both Beschloss and Cuomo made in their written works regarding America's greatest president. Every one of us should know more about Lincoln, his life, his beliefs, and his legacy, as they are still relevant today. Scholars and the public recognize that he was the best president, and he remains a pop culture favorite to this very day. Historians have recognized Lincoln as our best president in great measure because, according to Beschloss, if anyone lesser had been president in 1860, there's a good chance that the United States would have fractured into two or more countries. The general public doesn't always agree with the scholars, and lots would choose JFK as one of their favorite presidents. However, when it comes to Lincoln, the general public also consistently places him close to the top of their list. Lincoln is represented as an ideal in commercials, books, articles, cartoons, and even commercial branding. Even people who are ignorant of presidential notions will recognize Lincoln Logs, Lincoln, Nebraska, and the Lincoln Town Car. And the concept of Honest Abe is still popular with most Americans today. Lincoln's birthday was among the first federally mandated holidays, and to this day, at least one educational segment of every American child centers on the importance of Lincoln to our nation and our culture. He represents the best of the American dream because his character held strong even though his life story still contains many intriguing mysteries. While famous presidents like Washington and Jefferson had the advantage of wealth and status before coming to office, Lincoln was born to an illiterate farmer. His mother died at a very young age, and he had only about 18 months of formal schooling. Yet, as Beschloss states, through hard work, good character, political talent, and leadership skills, Lincoln made himself a world figure. Lincoln's life continues to be mysterious. Scholars can't factually describe much about his marriage or home life, as it was always private. People still wonder what life would be like today if Lincoln had survived that night in the theater. He was a man of paradox, which makes him intriguing even today. In his biography of Lincoln, Carl Sandburg describes his two-sided nature. Not often in the story of mankind does a man arrive on earth who is both steel and velvet, who is hard as a rock and soft as drifting fog, who holds in his heart and mind the paradox of a terrible storm and peace unspoken and perfect. Lincoln's character remains strong during his life and is still held up as the best of all American presidents. Both Beschloss and Cuomo point out that Lincoln's character is one that should be admired and emulated. He waged war without lying or cheating, which is a singular feat. He was kind to his enemies had a sense of humor even at the worst of times, loved his wife and children unconditionally, and welcomed the South back into the Union without contempt after the Civil War. We should all strive to have half the character that Lincoln held true every day of his life. He helped modern race relations, which he was able to articulate to the public because he understood the power of words. Scholars recognize that Lincoln's policy toward abolition was not as inclusive or far-reaching as it could have been. However, it was the first such radical policy ever brought about by a U.S. president, and opened doors for people like Frederick Douglass to expand upon equaling the playing field for all races in our nation. For over 100 years after he died, Lincoln was celebrated by African Americans as the great emancipator. Regardless of any shortcomings scholars recognized in his racial relations ideals, he is praised for his ability to convince the American public that African Americans must be given legal equality. Both scholars and the public agree that Lincoln's Gettysburg Address remains among the greatest speeches that any president has ever given. Though he was self-educated, his words were both poetic and powerful. While pressing unrelentingly for a policy that half the nation despised, his words were able to persuade millions to support his contention that slavery had to be abolished immediately, and that the country must be held sovereign as one country, undivided. It is clear to me that the ideals of Lincoln as the very best of our American presidents are still relevant and important today. The ideas that we should be honest, respect our differences, welcome those unlike us into our society, and keep our nation united and strong are among the highest we can aspire to as U.S. citizens, Americans, and humans.